Okay, my name is Osei-Frimpong. I come to you live, and today we're going to talk about how family politics explains other aspects of our political life, and it actually explains almost all of our aspects of political life. Because make no mistake, people are very busy. They're very, very busy. Happy Thanksgiving to you all. I just want to tell you that. But also, they're very, very busy, and what they really have to deal with is their family. And in this time, you are dealing with your family, and let me just tell you, it would be easier to deal with your family if politics were a little bit different. Now, what does that mean? Well, it'd be harder to deal with your family if politics were a little bit different, right? So you're so busy that you don't really have the time or concern to worry about, transnational issues. But you're also so busy, you don't really have the time or concern to worry about all of the marketing that's going into your children, right? So you might need the government to take care of some of the marketing that's going into your children, right? You might not have the energy to deal with what your kids might find on YouTube or anything like that. Or if there's going to be, a jewel salesman or a vape salesman outside of their elementary school. So you can't expect the market to stop the jewel salesman or the vape salesman outside of your elementary school. You have to do it, or you need the government to do it. But if you're very busy, you're going to need the government to do it. So a lot actually hangs on that. If you have incompetent teachers at your public school filling your kids full of all sorts of nonsense, but yet you're very busy at work, that means you now either need the government to weed out those incompetent teachers filling your kids full of nonsense, or now you need to take time off of work to deprogram your kid, but you're very busy. Your lifestyle costs. So now you need a quality of politics that allows you to do your job so you don't have to worry about a lot of nonsense going on to your kids. So now you start to see how your relationship with your family affects your political views. And I will say that I don't think people become more conservative as they get older, but what they learn is how bad liberals are at parenting. So it just kind of seems like they get more conservative just because they understand that liberals are incompetent parents, almost by design, right? So let me just tell you how all of the major philosophies that we're going to deal with for the next stretch deal with parenting. The Libertarian will tell you, look, I have my gun. I don't need the government to deal with my family at all. I don't need really the government. I have my gun, and I have the Nextdoor app, and I have all of my friends in militia, and that will keep all of the bad things away from my kids. I have my gun, I have the Nextdoor app, and then that's what I need. I don't need the government to keep the market and the bad marketing away from my kids. That's what libertarians will tell you. So they don't need government. They don't mind government, they don't mind civil society doing whatever civil society wants to do because they have their gun and they have the Nextdoor app, and that's going to be sufficient to protect their kids. Now, conservatives who are not libertarian will say, well, that's not actually enough. I still want my gun and I still want my Nextdoor app, but I also need the government making sure that porn isn't everywhere in my kids' schools. I need the government making sure that some of the more predatory aspects of the market stay away from my family and don't entice my family members from doing wrong things, from doing things that they ought not do. I might need the government to give my church a tax break so I can actually give my kids the spiritual foundation that they need. So I need the government to do more than just protect property. I also need the government to actually protect my family from some of the more nefarious aspects of market society. And, I'll be in favor of market society, but I need the government to protect me from more nefarious aspects. And I need it to protect me in a particular way, the conservative way. So that's what conservatives will say. Libertarians will say, no, I don't need the government to protect my family. I just need my property rights and you to protect me from foreign agents. I and the Nextdoor app will be able to protect my family. The conservatives will say, actually, no, I do need government to regulate some of the aspects of civil society so that my kids not being spammed with advertisements for cigarettes and meth. And I also a rating system on movies that the code, as they call it, the code on movies that actually make sure that porn isn't everywhere in my kid's life, right? By the way, I was doing some research on the code in movies. It turns out that movies before 34, they're called pre-code movies. They are fascinating in how awful they are. Not awful as in like bad cinematography or anything. Awful as in like the messages were not all right. They were hugely racist. They were all like literally, not literally porn, but like we did not invent sex in this generation, people. Because as soon as you gave people movie cameras in the 20s, in the roaring 20s, the first thing they did was start to film smut. The only reason we don't know that is that there was this huge campaign to institute a code from the Motion Picture Agency so that films were not as racist, sexually provocative, porny, or they didn't lionize like bad people, like doing bad things and getting away with it. Like there was entire genres of movies where bad people would do awful things and then be held up as heroes at the end. And you've heard of some of those gangster movies of the 20s, but they were different. Like so, the pre-code movies are different than the post-code movies. And Sammy Davis Jr. was in a very famous 20-minute pre-code movie that is just little dicey. You can just look up Sammy Davis Jr. Look, you can see the movie on YouTube. But yeah, so libertarians will say that you don't need a code. Conservatives will say like, no, it turns out that we gave Americans the video camera and the first thing they started to do was market and produce smut. And so we need some sort of code to regulate movies. And what we know of movies now is post-code, post-34 movies. You can do other research in that. It's a fascinating arena of study. I might do a show on it later on. But right now I'm just going to talk about how family politics explains America. Because kids were watching these movies, these pre-code movies, and coming home with all sorts of ideas about, people. And, the conservatives got together and said like, no, we need standards, norms around movies, and we need the government's help around this. So the libertarians will say that, no, we don't need any regulations to protect our family. I can protect them with the Nextdoor app and my gun. You just need to I just need the government to protect my property. Conservatives will say that actually I need government to watch some of the more aggressive and nefarious marketing of civil society. Because I can't watch everything that might find its way into my kids' ears and eyes. Liberals will go the other way and say that we need the government not to protect families from the market, but to protect children from their families. And this is how liberals get themselves into trouble because they don't respect family authority and family particularity. And they will, if given the power, actually undermine family authority and family legitimacy in terms of protecting children from their families that they find untoward. But the problem is that liberals are bad parents, so that they don't know what makes great people. So while a lot of my parenting would get me sent to a state prison if the wrong liberal were to see me, it turns out my kids are awesome because I actually know what I'm doing. So, got your defects. Liberals will actually say like, no, we need the government to protect children from their own family. And that is kind of trash. And a lot of you will say like, but there are some bad families out there. Yes, there are some bad families out there. And we have to let bad families be bad families. To a certain extent, we do have a public interest in creating better families. We do have a public interest in creating better families, but we do that through actually creating better families, not by emancipating minors and turning minors against their families, right? So if you want to create better family, we need entire policy around like maybe premarital counseling, maybe what kind of public education should go into what it is to be a family. We need to look at Cuba's code about like how to uphold families, but we need to uphold families as institutions against the government, as in institutions that have authority over the child, and that the child is an individual, not abstracted from their family, but only through their family. So if you want to secure the child's rights, that means you need to secure the families. Liberals have a problem with families, which is why often once people become families, they lose their sense of liberalism. Because liberals will tell you that children are their own people. No, they're not. They're members of the family. They don't decide their own needs. They don't decide the particular way to meet their needs. They don't even decide if they have a foreskin on their penis. They don't decide, those are all family decisions. They don't decide their needs. They don't decide the particular way to meet their needs. They're not even the particular actors to go about meeting their needs. I'm waking my kids up. I'm I'm force feeding them when it's necessary. They don't even act on their own. Everything is a concerted effort. And so when you see a fantastic child, just know that fantastic child is the product of a concerted effort of entire institutions, including, and most probably that kid's family. A lot of people hide that, but I'm telling you the truth. Apparently there's a very good documentary on Magnus Carlsen, the chess player. I haven't seen it. I'm going to queue it up with my family tomorrow because it shows that Magnus Carlsen, your number one chess player, you peel back, it turns out that he is a family project. Mozart, family project. Very great individuals you see are family project. You see any of my kids on the street for the rest of their life, you're going to think that they're great. It turns out they were a family project. So it is them, but it's not them abstracted from their families. And if you don't understand that, then you just don't understand. You're just a liberal who should probably not have families. All right, so not have kids themselves, because you're just going to screw it up. You're going to just think, oh, just let them play. They will just do what they enjoy. No, you're just a bad parent, lazy, and you don't have content. You don't have sufficient content to actually guide your family. Shame on you for having a kid and not actually thinking about the way the kid needs directions. All right, so while libertarians will say that they don't want government they don't need government's protection from the market to deal with their family. And conservatives will say yes, I actually need government's protection to deal with my family. And I need you to protect the porn and the all sorts of untoward marketing that, and some of the more nonsensical aspects that teachers will tell my kids. I need government to protect my family in this aggressive late capitalist society. And then liberals will say that no, well, what you need is a government that will actually protect kids from their family. Liberals will tell you that they need a government to protect kids from their family. And that is trash, because that means that the kid is their own actor and with their own judgment, abstracted from their family, and that's a vacuous quality of metaphysics and liberalism that assumes that you can abstract kids with their own sufficient identity from their family. If you want to help kids and realize kids in their freedom, that means you want to support the family so that the family can realize kids in their freedom, right? The best family policy in the United States would be securing people good jobs so that they can raise their family, good property so that they can raise their family. Right? That's the way the Homestead Act worked, right? So, and a good culture so that they could raise their family. Because children are entitled to be raised in a good family. And a lot of you guys did not have the upbringing that you deserve. If you're black, a lot of that has to do with Jim Crow leading into the civil rights movement. They screwed away. The United States policy of terrorism, of racial terrorism, foreclosed your ability to have the quality of parenting that you deserved. And this is one bit of reparations that I think needs to get argued more. And now I'm talking about how family politics explains everything. So liberals will tell you that we need to uphold the rights of the children against their family, as if you could think of the children abstracted from their family. But liberals are bad parents, so this is what they do. Then you have a real left, right? And a real left understands that families are institutions of freedom and are necessary for children, and that children have the right to be raised by a good family. Once again, Cuba's family code gets this part right. There's some issues with Cuba's family code that that don't. But in their constitution, unlike the United States Constitution, you have the notion that children have a right to an upbringing from their family, and children in turn are obligated to respect, care for, and protect their mothers, fathers, and other relatives in accordance with the law. Right? That's in their constitution. We need family protections in our constitution. But since we're so bad about talking about families in the United States, we just end up getting frustrated, and like all of our policy comes down to the inability to deal with like families and markets, and the fact that families are actually prey to markets and need protection from a lot of market actors, and they need protection from government. So how do we think about that? And what does it mean that we can't abstract children from their families, and that they need to be individuals through and in and through their families? Because their individuality, their concept, their being is bound in their families. And to abstract that is just a form of like retardation in terms of an affront against their agency. An affront against their agency, because their real agency is going to come through their family. So if you want to help them as individual agents, you help their family do the family's business, right? So the left understands that the government needs to delegate powers to the family, but delegate powers and then enable that family to exercise those powers in an autonomous way, often against the government. Not often, but if necessary, against the government. So the government delegates powers to the family that then has a legitimate standing, a publicly recognized standing against any sort of other government excesses. Right? So that's what the left understands family policy as. I wrote a piece, I'll put it in the description about how the left needs to support nuclear families, and why the left is bad at supporting nuclear families, and why the left needs to support nuclear families. And I say nuclear families because extended families can just be another source of tyranny. You don't want family life to be dictated by the richest uncle. You don't want clan families. You want independent, self-sufficient families that can then, organize the way that they want to organize. Right? And for that to happen, you need certain like government guarantees. Like you need the families need to have a secure, independent income. And also, I'd be one of those people who would give away vouchers for house cleaning and stuff, like some of the non-important essential family work. We have school vouchers. We have a person who takes your trash to the trash dump. I think we should have vouchers for housekeeping. And I'd be open up to all sorts of ideas around this, because I don't think that's necessarily a part of the meaningful aspect of being a family person, but it might suck away too many hours. So heck, if I run for office, you'll hear housekeeping vouchers for the people. Housekeeping vouchers for the people. Oh yeah. So yeah, we pay. So someone in the chat, Dawid Ben Yehuda Israel. Yeah, a nice Irish fella, I suspect. I'm joking, Dawid. I'm joking. Yeah, he says we pay to have our home cleaned to free up time for our family. Yeah, I want to read with my kids and work through some like more meaningful work, and that meaningful work is like not the same as scrubbing baseboards. So yeah. I support families, which means I support people paying for I support people paying a fair wage to people to come in and clean your house. Pay professionals. They can do it 3 times as fast, come in with all the industrial equipment and do it. And then that allows you to throw a ball with your kid and do like more meaningful activities with your kid. And I think that's perfectly appropriate. I'm not so into giving my kids chores either, like banal chores. Now my kids do a lot of work in terms of like after this we're going to do some more extra math and and then we have music lessons twice a day. So my kids like, depending on who you talk to, I work them too much, but they don't, like, I'm not a huge fan of giving them just like chores for the sake of chores. They don't do dishes, for example. But like, you know, my second grader does do long division pretty well, right? My fourth grader is doing some pretty advanced algebra. So I'm not so big in doing chores, but you know, I run them a mile every day. Every day we, like the whole family, we run a mile. My kid also just set the state record. My 7-year-old set the 8 and under record for the 2K. So like, those are the kinds of things I do with my kid, and I drive with my kids. Not so much making beds. Beds do not get made in this house. But yet, my kids thrive. And that's how it is. So if we want to help children and realize them as agents, you have to support their families. Liberals do not like families. And honestly, a lot of the loud liberals kind of like, especially the LGBT or some of the like used to be conservatives who come over liberals, like felt oppressed by their kind of possibly deformed family, who then used the family authority to smash down, you know, their rightful way of life. So they come and bring this rhetoric of protecting children from their families to the left and to liberalism in general, but that doesn't necessarily belong. Like I said, look at Cuba's, and I have some issues with Cuba's constitution, but the family code is like, it's actually not bad, right? Children have a right to be raised by their family. This abstract liberalism of the state raising children, or even the lazy liberalism of the village raising children. No, families raise children. And then the village is made up of networked families. And if you don't get that, you are just probably you're probably just some divorcee who screwed up or some single mom who screwed up the chance to have an intact family, and now have to tell yourself some sort of story about how you didn't abuse your child by like refusing to let the child's father actually participate. And so now you say like, well, you know, we need a village. No, you don't need a village. I mean, yes, you need a village, but the village is made up of families, and you screwed that up. And now, like, you've de facto abused your child, and are like whining about a village which was never supposed to happen. Your child was supposed to have good parents, and then you being a good parent was supposed to network with other good parents. It was never supposed to be like some mentor raising your child. First of all, if I joined a mentorship if I joined a mentorship program, people are saying, Army, you should be a mentor. Think about it. Do you really want me as a mentor as your child? They might come home with all sorts of ideas. But what I do want you to do is watch this video with your family. 'Tis the season. Watch this video, maybe instead of going to church tomorrow. I don't know. Oh no, tomorrow's Saturday. So maybe watch this video. It's under a half hour. I'm going to wrap it up pretty soon. And talk about what I'm saying here about, families and villages, but mostly families, and the children's right to like a healthy family, and how we could use public policy to support that healthy family. And if you want to, you could read as a family the piece I'm going to put in the description about the left case. I do have to get this quick. I'm looking at the sun. I gotta end this up before I lose Dawid Ben Yehuda Israel. He's got Shabbat tomorrow, so I want to wrap this up before all the electronics go off. But you need families, and you need the government to support your family, and you want to live in a nation where government supports families, and that's going to look like a lot of different things. Right? And if you ignore the need for government to support and uphold your family, then you're going to ignore a lot of our politics and a lot of our kind of political wrangling, because a lot of it's going to come from liberals who are acting out against their incompetent parents, who then need to think that you need to protect children from their parents, which is bad. Or it's going to come from conservatives who rightly understand the predations of the market and want the government to protect their family from the more predatory aspects of the market. So they're going to be a little bit censorious. but they want it in a particular way. And that's the particularity is the problem with conservative parenting, because it's particularity without actually like rigorous thought. So, and then you got the libertarians who say like, oh, I don't need government to protect my family. Yeah, you do. And the Nextdoor app and your gun's not going to do it when they set up like Pornhub and like all of these Jewel right next to your school. And you like to think you live in a time pre-late modern society where the market doesn't infuse everything. But you actually there's no place you can hide from the market now. So you actually need government to like not make sure that your kid isn't addicted to some kind of like nonsense. And you also need government to make sure that like your kid doesn't eat bad food and all of that stuff. All right, so the libertarians are wrong about that. And then the left will say like, yes, we need to actually explicitly delegate authority to the family as an institution, not treat the child as abstracted from their family, but think about what do families need in order to do their jobs as families, especially black people. You did not have the parents in the family household that you deserve. You deserve, black people. And that's not some deficiency in our autonomous culture. That's the fact that our culture has never been autonomous. Our culture has never actually been autonomous. First, it was overdetermined by Jim Crow, where families couldn't actually determine what their kids would do because at any point in time, they'd go afoul of some white guy and end up strung up on a tree or run out of town. And then that kind of overdetermination was thrown right into market liberalism after the civil rights movement with no time to like grow a family in between. So then they started telling women that like, well, you're an independent person. You don't need a husband. Your kids barely need their parents. Households don't matter. Everyone is just a business relationship. And if it's not making you happy, just split. And since we didn't have an autonomous culture that said like, that's nonsense. We have a lot of single homes, and not just single homes, broken families where like you're half at one. And now we have a whole lexicon around that, parallel parenting, but parallel parenting isn't parenting. That's parallel. This idea that you can just send your kid to like your spouse's house for a week or 3 days, half the week, and then they come back and you have no idea what happened over there and you can't ask because you hate the spouse, your ex-spouse, and you can't ask the kid because that would be putting the kid in between. And so you have one way of doing household here and then they live in a completely different way of doing household that you can't have no power over there. That's not raising your kid. That's enforced schizophrenia. That's imposed schizophrenia. So yeah, your kid's going to end up in an existential mess. And like the only person who really knows what's going on with them is their therapist because you screwed up your parenting because you did not watch this screen before you got married. So you didn't know what to, what battles to fight and what's worth doing for the kids. You're welcome. By the way, if you appreciate what I'm doing, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademics.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50. This is how I support my family. So if you support me and my family talking about you and your family, go to www.funkyacademics.com and kick in. Also, nobody's going to tell women that they are just abusing childs left and right by splitting up with their baby's mamas, and dads are screwing up families left and right by skipping out. But I think we have a handle on the dad thing. Everybody knows that deadbeat dads are a problem. People don't know that moms that just kind of like feel a certain way and skip out are a huge problem. Like women initiate 70% of the divorces. Like it's because they haven't listened to this scream, and that's child abuse. No fault divorce is a form of child abuse. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's not just that many of my views are similar to Jewish culture. The Jewish culture is actually a functional culture. So they're going to be similar to like a lot of especially functional cultures that have made it into modernity. They're going to be similar to a lot of functional cultures that made it into modernity. I will say, and I say this often, my favorite Jewish story, and I have a lot of them because I did go to Brandeis for a while. My my favorite Jewish family story is I was talking to a prof a few years ago, and he was lamenting. He's an Orthodox Jew. He was lamenting about how his third son did not finish his education. His third son did not finish his education. And I was like, yeah, raising kids is hard. And we were talking about it because I was thinking about my dissertation and all that. And he was like, yeah, my first two finished their schooling, but my third didn't finish schooling. So I lamented and we commiserated. And then a few days later, I was talking to him about something else. And we were talking about his sons, and, the first two got their PhDs. And the second one, the one who didn't finish his education. That means he's ABD, all but dissertation. He has an undergraduate from the University of Chicago, a master's from someplace else, and he almost has a PhD, but didn't finish, but has yet to write his dissertation. So he didn't finish his education. So mind you, when I hear people say they didn't finish their education, I think, he dropped out of high school, maybe made it through, got his GED later, maybe dropped out of college. Not has 2 degrees but didn't finish his PhD. So let me just tell you, if you think that your family culture is pro-education, but that story isn't something that would have come out of your mouth, then you just don't know what pro-education is, which is fine. I mean, you could care about education a lot, but just not have the knowledge to know that that's what pro-education looks like. So even if you don't care as much about education, but know what pro-education looks like, you're in a better place than someone who cares a lot, but thinks that caring a lot looks like reading to their kids sometimes. Right? So yeah, every time I'm with my kids, I think of that story because it's the truth. This is how you get 5 kids to Princeton. like this is how, it's the truth about how, what real, concern for education looks like. So what's my view on the market blowback from therapy? Life insurance. So, I think therapy is full of hacks, right? So I'm a huge fan of mental health insofar as I think the mind is a thing and it needs to be healthy. And talk therapy is wonderful and important, but I think it should be philosophers or, church leaders at least. Preferably philosophers, second best church leaders. The hacks that are produced from therapy departments and doctors of psychology and those people, I think, have done more damage to society than just about anybody else. If therapy would have just blown up, just imploded in 1974, I think we would all be in a better place. I think we would all be in a better place. And that's because I just think it's shot through with hacks who don't admit that they're hacks. And then there are all these market incentives for them to bring you back. And it's like bad pseudoscience as opposed to philosophy. Because it can't be hard science. It's not strictly empirical. You're dealing with the mind. And, there are a lot of mental aspects that don't give themselves to the senses. So you can't just say experiential stuff like history and philosophy matter in a way that the hard sciences can't deal with. But it's not quite philosophy because they're not serious thinkers who can think through the rational content that reason gives you about how freedom is a form, family enables a form of freedom and all that stuff. A therapist told my mom to divorce my dad. Come on. And right, she was right. It made her happier. Horrible for the kids, and ultimately horrible for her mom, which is one reason why I'm talking to you now the day after Thanksgiving as opposed to with her. So my dad probably died 15 years earlier than he should have. And my sister definitely could have used my dad. My dad wanted me to be a judge. Instead, I'm talking to you on YouTube. I'm not a judge. So I think I could have used my dad too. And it turns out, but therapists are kind of horrible. Anyway, so it never ceases me to amaze how many C- minds become wealthy therapists. The thing is, what I found out, now that I'm old enough and I have a lot of friends who are actual therapists, they're just kind of the unserious wives of engineers. Because you don't really make that much money. And you're just not serious. So if I were to ever like go to a therapist or a couples therapist or anything like that, I would need to know that they raised multiple kids who are worth dams. Preferably a son or a daughter, because sometimes you hear these people who like have their daughter do real well, but their son's in the basement, playing video games, right? So if I were to go to a therapist, I want to know how their kids are. I want to know how their own kids are. And if they don't have kids, they got to be real smart, man. But if they have kids, those kids better be winners. And if they don't have, so you're Caribbean Obsidian. Yeah, if they don't have kids, then I don't know. And if they don't have winners for kids, then they shouldn't be talking to me about how I do my family, because a lot of my family is organized around setting winners for kids. Yeah, Caribbean Obsidian. I'm gonna watch Magnus tomorrow with the family. I'm gonna do something I normally don't do. Usually I pre-screen movies myself, and then if I approve, then the family goes with them. But I'm gonna take it on spec. I did a quick little Google search and read a little bit about the documentary. I'm going to show him Magnus. I'm going to show them Magnus tomorrow, the 2016 documentary on Magnus Carlsen. Now, what I knew about Magnus Carlsen before was that his dad walked through, the big book of chess with him. I knew that. I don't really, I play a little bit of chess, but not seriously. And I know of Magnus Carlsen. And the dad walked through the big book of chess with him. And that probably takes hours, but I'm going to watch the documentary with my family tomorrow. If it's good, I'll do a show on it, because if it's good, I need you guys to know it, because I want you guys to have media that helps you be better at your family, because I think that's important. I think that's you need more content. One of the reasons I do this show is content. My birthday is September 1st. One of the reasons I do this show is to give you content to think about your parenting. I also want to give you content to fight the market, and even often fight your spouse, maybe. I'm trying to give you the quality of arguments that will help you rise above some of the bad ideas of your spouse. And I think your spouse and you should watch this together and hash out how I'm right or wrong. It's very funny, because in book 8 of Republic, Plato's Republic, the fall of society pretty much happens because the wife nags the husband about not making much money because the husband is, studying philosophy and becoming wise. And so that leads to the fall of society, because then the husband changes and makes money, and then tries to get honor a different way. So the love of honor instead of the love of wisdom brings down all of society. So that's hilarious. So yeah, I want you to keep your family together, but I want you guys to watch this with your spouse. She's going to think I'm crazy because, book 8 of the Republic. She's going to think I'm crazy and that I'm obviously wrong because all of her friends are trash, and they will get offended vicariously by the idea that she's even entertaining these ideas, right? But you have to keep your eye on your kids, and since you married her and love her, bring her along so that you're a good family, right? Intact. So, and if you're early in your relationship, I think you should watch this on your first date. Early in the relationship, bookmark this and save this video. So the next girl you date on whatever app, instead of going to see the newest movie, fire this up and then have it out on this topic. Because I'm trying to save you divorce. I'm trying to save you divorce, because you're probably going to bring some hot liberal chick to come watch this, and she's going to be all in her feelings and call me all sorts of things. And I'm simply going to be right. And you have to ask yourself, is this someone you want to be married to and raise kids with? Because eventually it's going to, this is someone who's going to have equal say over your kids. So you need them to be on the same page, or at least be open to a quality of wisdom that I'm putting down. Right? And I'm telling you, just how family politics explain U.S. politics. Liberals will say they don't need government protection from the market. Conservatives will say they do need government protection from the market in a particular way that's not necessarily healthy. And liberals will say that, yes, we need government protection, but the child needs government protections from their parents. And then the real left will say that, yes, we need government protections. The family needs government protections and the family needs government enhancements, but the family needs autonomy to raise the children. Right? If you're serious about supporting children, you don't support children in their autonomy from their family. You support families so that they might have better ideas. So maybe you think about what kind of family culture we want and family media we want. And what kind of family we want normal. Yeah, someone said there's only liberal women in the dating pool. Trad women are in the minority. Well, they get snapped up quick. And if you're watching this, you're probably a little bit broken. So, they get snapped up by the time they're 20, 25, 20, 22, 23. So, and then they have great lives. I wish I could have attracted, maybe I did. I was gone. By that time. But the people who had their eyes on the ball, and hopefully my kids who will have their eye on the ball, they're just going to be able to get, first round draft picks because they're going to be able to talk like this. And then the people who get it will get it. And then they'll just, just knock this out early and together and everything will just be cool because it doesn't have to be hard. So any woman you're dating over 25 is going to have to be deprogrammed. But it's okay. I'm trying to give you the arguments to deprogram her with a good sense of humor. And hopefully you'll be in it together and work it out. Yeah, because, you have to have everything right to get a trad woman in the on the first run. That's like my friend grew up poor, so there would be people passing around food, like we'd all go to dinner, and then so food would get passed around, and the poor person who grew up poor took it all the way, always took like a lot of food and made up a big plate, whereas people who grew up money took just a little bit, because the people who grew up with money assumed that it would come back around, but the poor person just took it all the first run because they didn't think that the food would come back around. And you can't date great women and assume that they're going to come back around. So if you meet one in their 20 when you're 21, just snap it up now, then. There might be more fish in the sea, but more is always better. You have a good fish. If you have a good fish, just lock in that good fish. Because as you get older in the secondary market, it's just not necessarily great. But everyone's going to have to some sort of deprogram. So even if you have a trad wife, watch this. Kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. And I hope I've clarified or I've given you something to think about on this Thanksgiving break. Peace.